why don't you introduce yourself to those on my platform who don't know you, and then I'll introduce myself to your platform.
Yeah, so my name's Trey. I'm a narcissistic abuse survivor and a trauma-informed coach. I'm getting my doctoral degree in occupational therapy, and what's been really cool is we've learned a lot in there about like rebuilding your life after trauma, whether it's physical or mental. So it's kind of worked perfectly with what I do on social media. I started my journey on social media almost 2 years ago at this point, and really had no intention on doing this as a job. Really, I just kind of posted a funny skit that talked about narcissism, and it blew up, and realized there's a whole community of people that went through exactly what I went through, and made me realize that, number one, I wasn't isolated to my own experience, and number two, that there's a huge need for people to speak up and talk about this. And through that, I've been able to make this my job now, and have made great friends like Carrie, and just very honored to get to do what I do. And it's fun seeing how my social media life and my future life as an OT are starting to blend together really well. So that's I'm a single, kind of like a one-man show on this thing, and just kind of really just going with the flow, just letting it happen naturally. I'm engaged since my narcissistic abusive relationship, and also have 3 young kids. So dad guilt was real, life after narcissism is real, like all that stuff. I'm able to talk about all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm so excited too. I saw your stuff early on when you were doing I love when I know, I'm sure it's a lot of work. I can't imagine the hours that you put in, but when you do the parts of the narcissist, like hoovering and love bombing,
yeah.
and all of, oh man, it was, for me, it was a very good way to conceptualize the internal confusion, but also intentionality, the strategy, the manipulation that goes into it, the exploitation. It put it into a visualization, so help me normalize, or at least understand what I just survived. It was really, really helpful. I loved it. I love
Well,
that.
thank you.
Yeah. So I'm Dr. Carrie McAvoy. I am a psychologist with over 20 years of counseling experience. I actually had this, I feel like I'm in my second life. That's how it feels to me. So I had my life before. I was married, raised 3 boys. They're all now almost Trey's age, actually. They're young men doing well. I got widowed. I unexpectedly, my late husband was diagnosed with cancer. In fact, this is the time period. I'm already having flashbacks this week. It was on the 18th, he went really ill, and we knew something was catastrophically wrong. And then the day after Christmas was when we got the diagnosis that he had a rare and terminal cancer. So that started the next 5.5 months of horror of watching somebody that was strapping and healthy and golfing in November, literally being gone in June of 5 months later, was gone. So my life then just imploded, and I wanted it back. And so I started dating way too fast. I mean, I knew it was, it's fast when it's the time is really short and you're on the dating apps and you know that you shouldn't be, but you can't stop yourself. So I met my second husband a year later, and we were married a year after that, and ended up in this horrifically abusive relationship. Like, I would say he was the epitome of everything bad that ever happened in my life, all pushed into one person. And, the weird thing is, and I just put out content about it today, is I didn't even think of it as abuse when I was in the middle of it. But it was horrific. It was awful. Never raised his voice. He rarely raised his voice. Never called me a bad name, and never hit me directly. But on the other hand, as far as the horrificness of it, the level of completely demolishing my self-esteem and my value and my confidence, I don't know anyone who could be more successful at knowing how to do it and doing it really, really well. The manipulation was class act, was high. So I got out 2 years later after really trying to save the relationship for 2 years. And then it was then when I started writing my book that I discovered, wow, I was abused, that this was abuse. And I knew he was a narcissist, but I didn't have the word for narcissistic abuse. Kind of stumbled into this community backwards, like finding your video and seeing Lee's stuff and Lisa's stuff, and like, oh, Oh, wow. And then what shocked me, and I know I hear this from a lot of people, is that how similar our stories are. I thought no one could have experienced what I experienced. I thought that was too outside. That was like the stuff of Netflix series, limited series is what I thought. So when I started hearing other people's stories, and that the commonality of all of us, that what he said to me was even the same as things that was said to you, or when you parse that inside of that down into pieces, like, shit, were you there? I swear you were there. So to me, it's been shocking to find the universality of all of what we've been going through. It's amazing. So yes, that's my platform. These days I'm full time. People ask me a lot, do I counsel? No. Do I offer a clarity call? So if somebody's lost and needs direction, I'll meet with you one time and kind of help you figure out what do you do next, or what are you needing, or what resources maybe you're not aware of. But I don't counsel these days. I primarily educate and create content, and I write and do that kind of stuff. And one of the things that we're doing is Trey and I have this group coaching that we have been offering. We're right now midpoint, and we're going to be starting the new cycle, the new group in January. You want to talk about that? Tell people what we're doing?
Yeah. So the whole goal of the group really is it to be, so we're both very pro support groups. We think there's a huge need for them. I'm even starting one at the end of January as well with the Lindsay Goodman. But that's not the goal of this group. The goal of this group is to really be able to walk away with strategies on what to do on a day-to-day basis to get you closer to that peace and reclaiming that confidence that, we have, or just establishing confidence for the first time. That was kind of my case. Because, we hear a lot about the knowledge of this, and we hear about how there's another side, and I was even in therapy. I was blessed that I had a good support group. They did their best. They didn't understand, but they did their best. But nobody could really tell me what to do. Nobody could really say, okay, so this week let's focus on this. Okay, let's when this happens, here's how you can distract yourself in a healthy way. Here's how you can cope. Here's how you can get your, nobody could really do all of that for me. I had to figure all of that out on my own by trial and error. So what we've done is we've designed a group coaching that's 6 weeks. And so you have a little bit of that support group vibe where you're in a group of people with a shared common experience, and you get a little bit of best of both worlds. You get kind of the counseling background with Carrie, and then you get with OT and how we work in mental health. It is about strategies. And so you kind of get the best of both worlds, where you can get that counseling perspective and the strategy perspective from my training, and that I'm currently getting trained on. And so it's just a lot of practical how-tos. There's some reflection work that's done, and what we like about it is we don't talk about your ex very much. There's a few things that we do just because we have to break some dissonance and stuff, but the focus of it is about you, and you reclaiming your life and reclaiming your peace and your clarity and your confidence. And so far it's been going really well, and we've gotten some really great feedback. So we're really excited to launch another group and hope that you guys will be a part of it too.
Yeah, I'm super excited. One of the things I know there's been a lot of criticism about talking about trauma as if talking about it is wrong. And it's not. It's the first stage after you've been abused. You need to know that it was real. You need to know that others agree that it was real, and sort of validate that if you just walked away from an airplane crash, you'd be talking about it for a while. That's a natural, normal reaction. But what happens for some of us is that our bodies, because we were in chronic abuse for so long, is in this hyper excited state, and we find it hard to move to the next stage, which is to sort of reclaim control over your regulation of yourself and your emotions, but also how to actually regain confidence in yourself, and to begin to, take back your life and reclaim confidence. So this is what this is deliberately about. It's to teach you strategies to reset, re-regulate yourself, and then what to do with those sort of obsessive, anxious thinking that is part of the overstimulated, over-aroused nervous system, which is, like I said, is a very common part of abuse, especially when we've been in long-term abuse. I think one good way to sort of differentiate is, well, a lot of us heard of PTSD and CPTSD. The hard part about CPTSD is that we lived in this situation for a period of time and it's become normal. We don't even realize it's become normal. So we walk away still in a way acting as if we're still being abused. So this is helping you like separate that and reclaim control over yourself.
Yeah, and it's a lot about also rewiring your brain a little bit
Yeah.
too. I'm actually, now that I'm on break from school for a little bit, I have some time for like reading for me. So I'm reading this book by it's a collaborative book by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And Carrie, you probably heard of it. And
I
it's called
haven't.
it's called What Happened to You. And
Yes.
it is such a good book, and what it really talks about. I mean, I'm not even a quarter of the way done with it, and I've already got so many highlights in it. But one of the things that that Bruce Perry explains so well in here is that the way that our brain naturally works, and I'm summarizing here, the way that our brain naturally works is that we react before we can process, essentially. So if like you are used to being in this environment of stress and really danger and trauma, even when you're out of it, that's what your brain's naturally going to go to when you get triggered or when something happens. That's why we understand PTSD with like war vets so much better, because it makes more sense, right? In our mind. Like, oh yeah, when a car backfires, it sounds like when they were overseas or something. Like it makes sense, right? So but it's harder for us because it's not as tangible. Like the things that we went through, well, some of us it is that tangible, but for some of us like myself and what Carrie said, he technically didn't lay his hand on me. There was physicalness, but he technically didn't lay his hand on me. So most of the trauma that I went through, there weren't physical scars, there weren't physical evidence of what it went through, which is what made it all that more confusing for me.
Exactly. And the name of the book again is What Happened.
I have it right here. So it's What Happened to You. I'm going to actually end up adding, I wanted to start reading it first before I put it on my link in my bio, but I'm going to add this as a recommended book because it just helps explain it so well. And I love how it's like written too. It's like, it's black and blue. Can't really see it, but like the blue parts are like when you can tell that Oprah's kind of interviewing him through the book. So it reads very easily. It reads like a conversation.
Yeah. So What Happened to You is by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. And by the way, Bruce Perry, I don't know if you know his history, who he is. Do you know much about him?
Yeah, we learned about him this past semester. That's why.
Yeah. He was he was the psychiatrist involved with the Waco kids.
Mm-hmm.
He was pulled in and interviewed them. He wrote a book called The Boy Raised as a Dog.
Yeah.
I read that book. I love that book. That's another great book. It's not good. It's not a book that's going to be helpful to understand how to heal from abuse, but it is helpful to understand the way trauma can show up. So it gives you different pictures of trauma. Yeah. But What Happened to You is really powerful. And what's interesting, I didn't get very far into it yet, but I love Oprah's story about helping those, I think it's those Nigerian girls. Is that the country? She was helping girls, in an African country, and they were going to a new school, and she thought she'd kind of saved them. They should be doing really well, and they started becoming harming themselves. She started seeing the skyrocketing rate of mental health problems, and she then got a hold of Dr. Perry and said, "What's wrong? I've pulled them out of the environment, and they act like nothing's changed." And that was when this book came out. Yeah. Really powerful. She interviewed Harry around it. Did you get to see her documentary on it? She had something where she kind of talked. Yeah, there's actually a series. I think it's on Apple, and Prince Harry is part of it, where he talked about one of the basic questions nobody seems to ask people is, how are you doing? What happened to you? Well, how are you doing? It's very powerful.
I think I've seen clips of that interview on YouTube.
Yeah. What I'm reading right now, and you guys don't gasp, it's like, how could I get this far and not read it fully? But is Dr. Bessel van der Kolk's book, Body Keeps the Score. So I'm...
That's on my bookshelf. That's the next one.
I know. I'm working through that right now. So you guys are going to hear a lot of trauma-related information.
Yeah, I was literally holding both books in my hand. I was like, I don't know which one to start with. So I ended up going with this one. But that's literally on my bookshelf.
Yeah, I'm listening to that on Audible right now. In fact, I'm thinking, how I'm interviewing Lundy Bancroft in February. I think I'll reach out to Dr. Bessel van der Kolk and ask him to be the next interview.
Oh, yeah, that would be awesome.
I think maybe that's possible. I'm hoping. We'll see. I think it would be utterly fascinating because he would be so practical. That's what I would want him in, is to talk about what should we be doing, particularly from a bottom-up a bottom up versus a top down. So for those of you who don't know, there's two ways to help heal. There's what's called top down, and that's what normally when you think of therapy or coaching is when you engage in the head. So back to what Trey was saying, there's three parts to our brain. There's the frontal, the neocortex, the frontal part, the front part, which is the thinking part. It's where you plan, you strategize, you set goals, you think about yourself. It's that kind of this observation of self. It's the youngest part of the brain. So it's the part of the brain most of the rest of of mammals and life on Earth don't have. Then there's the midsection, which is the mammalian brain. That's anybody who nurses young has that part. That's where emotions and memory and all that stuff is stored there. And then the deep part, right above your spinal cord, is called the reptilian brain. It's the brain stem, and that regulates body stuff like your temperature, your heart rate, respiration, all of the basic stuff that keeps you alive. But it also is what regulates our alarm system, because that's also part of our survival, so how we keep safe. So what happens when we're in chronic or any kind of trauma is the reptilian brain reacts first. It's the same way that when you jerk back from a hot stove, we also have a jerk back or a reaction to when we experience some kind of threat, because the body's primary goal is to keep you alive. So it reacts first, but it's slowly I think they've actually timed how long it takes from the reptilian brain to the neocortex. It's shockingly long.
Yeah, he didn't actually say the amount of time in the book, but essentially by the time that that part of your brain takes over, if you use the war vet example, in a car backfires, by the time that part of the brain even takes over, they're already on the floor, ducked and covered.
Exactly. I
The
think
reaction's already happened.
Seconds to nearly a minute plus long. Yeah. I mean, and the other problem is if the reptilian brain goes online, it tends to pull everything offline.
Mm-hmm.
There's the other problem is, so when you're reacting, you actually, all those other parts of the brain go dead. They go on a functional MRI, they're like empty. There's like nothing, there's no activity there because it's funneling everything into survival.
Yeah.
So what happens though is when we do therapy or the traditional types of treatment, we usually start top down, which is we start with the neocortex and we have you do thinking work. And but the problem is the damage has been done all the way down to the core, to the deepest part of your brain. So any questions for Trey and I? If you have any questions, put a thumbs up in front of the comment or question, and we'd be happy to talk to you guys about it. We don't mean just to have this be an interview today, but how are you, all of you, doing as we head into Christmas this week? How are you doing, Trey? Are you ready?
Yeah, for the most part, I am. I'm more excited. I'm more excited about the week after Christmas because my kids and I are going out of town. And I look forward to that. We always do something in between each semester because, my kids are earning this degree with me. I can't do all the fun stuff that I'm usually able to do. So we're actually going out to the countryside for like a solid 6 days. So I'm really, really excited. Can you post the name of the book? Yeah, I think when I'm on a joint live, I can't type comments, but I'll say it again. So it's called What Happened to You by Bruce Perry and Oprah Winfrey. It's not on the link in my bio yet because I wanted to start reading it first before I did. But when I get off, I'm also going to add it to the link in my bio too as one of my recommended, kind of like my book club recs.
Yeah, I have one too, mental health resources, and it's not on mine either, but I'll make sure I add it as soon as I get off. So what I'm seeing on the comments of mine is that people are saying there's two big themes coming up. One is this is time of the year is sort of a reminder of what they don't have anymore, what's been lost or what's happened. Like for me, sharing around, this is the time of year when my late husband was diagnosed with cancer. Or the other big issue I'm seeing is it's a time of year when they're aware that a lot of people have family and community and they're feeling really isolated. So
yeah.
What are your thoughts or comments about either one of those?
I think especially this is where anytime that you're redefining what a holiday looks like, it's always difficult. Before my narcissistic ex, I was married, and the holidays are always a little bit difficult for me in that sense, just because I never pictured them this way. Like I never pictured it to be. Now, With that said, I have a great relationship with my kid's mom. So every holiday we split it. We just alternate who has the morning and who has the afternoon. But we split it every year. So there's never a holiday I don't see them. But it's still just not like nobody pictures that, as the outcome of whenever they start a family. Now, one of the things that I just have to do is I just shift the focus to the fact that, like, with my situation, I'm very grateful that I have the relationship that I do with my kid's mom, because we do joint stuff together on holidays still, and we do split the day, and we have great communication. So even though it looks different, there's still some silver linings to the situation, and we're still a very unified front with our kids. But when it comes to kind of more of an abusive situation, I think it's looking at the weight of the outcome over the weight of the cost. And what I mean by that is that, yes, the holidays may look different because you have chosen, let's say that you have a really toxic family environment and you've chosen to not participate in that. Like, that costs you something, right? It makes your holidays look different. It makes, maybe you're spending it with different people. Like, maybe you're just spending it with less people. Like, it costs and it sacrifices you something. But the outcome of that is that you are protecting your peace. The outcome of that is that you are not exposing yourself to abusive behaviors. The outcome of that is that you are growing closer to healing, rather than, continuing to be set back by, like, those undertone comments or the dog whistling comments or just the flat out passive or just flat out aggressive comments that people make. The outcome of that outweighs the cost of what it's costing you, if that makes sense. So it's kind of shifting the focus onto, because our brain naturally just wants to, I've heard so many lectures and TED Talks about the fact our brain, it's annoying how much it goes to the negative first. Like, that's always what it goes to. It goes to the glass half empty mindset first. And you have to consciously, like, almost stop that in its tracks and redirect it to reminding yourself, but this is why I'm doing it. And over time, this is going to become my new normal. Over time, I'm going to see why I feel safer doing this and why it's worth it for me.
Yeah, it's been really tough. I find that I get into an envious mindset where I start to notice what other people seemingly have that I don't have. And I have to catch myself. And I do I do the same thing. I root myself in truth. I remind myself that I don't know their full story. And just because it looks pretty doesn't mean it is pretty. And that, do I really want to have someone else's life? I often remind myself that when I really think about other people's lives, I really don't want anyone's life but my own.
Yes.
The next place I go to is I ask myself, what could I do one small way that will make this a little bit better? Maybe it's as simple as making yourself some hot cocoa and finding a Hallmark movie. But I try to ask myself what would sort of reset the mood in a different direction. And it can be really subtle. Sometimes it's even just contacting someone else who's in the same position as you, and then having a moment together and maybe telling stories, or even doing a joint Netflix movie watch or something like that, but keeping it simple. So I that's what I do. I ask myself, why am I being envious of this other person? Like, for example, I have friends that I know that go every year. They go to Colorado, go skiing every year, every freaking year they do that. And I end up thinking, well, back in the day when I was married to my late husband, we couldn't afford to do that. It wouldn't have worked out. And then, and then afterwards, then I was like in my pity party because I'm widowed and I don't have and now I'm single and all of that stuff. It just feels really, really hard. So what I remind myself is, though, but for them, I know for her, it's not all that fun. I've been doing every year. And I also know they have a big fight on the way home, that it always kind of wraps up with this nastiness. And I'm thinking, you know what? And she has to manage all of that. And I'm like, glad I'm not managing it. So I remind myself the truth, that it's just window wrapping is all I'm seeing. I'm not really seeing what life is like, and that my life is my own and it's what I make of it. So taking back, it is amazing what you said. There's stats on this. Like, you have to see something 3 times positive for every negative or something like that.
Yeah.
It's amazing how out of balance negativity is. It gets you can read 10 good reviews, but that one review, like, I can tell you which one right now is just like sticking in my craw. So
yeah, no,
I can have lots of glowing ones, but
Yeah. And just to kind of give another example too, um, we just had Christmas with my dad's side of the family this past weekend, and this was the first year that my grandfather wasn't around because he passed away in June, which is my dad's dad. And, it was just, I think the first one's always the hardest after someone's passed, and especially because he was like the patriarch of our family. So there's been a generational shift in how our family looks right now. There's a lot that's gone into it. So my dad is kind of taking over that patriarch role, which is it's even just like odd for me because it's just like, oh gosh, that means I'm next. So it's just there's a lot of just like there's a lot of weirdness to that. But we did just something really simple where we had everybody bring some kind of game. So like my aunt brought loteria, which is like Spanish bingo, and then my dad ended up buying everybody like the if y'all know about Texas, you know that Buc-ee's is like a huge thing here. So my dad bought like the tie-dye Buc-ee's Christmas t-shirts for everybody, and we've never done like a theme, but it was just something like just something simple like that, we just did something that we've never done. And that's a lot about what we talk about like in our group too, is when there's these activities that have a negative connotation to them now because of something that your ex did, or maybe you've just not been allowed to do one for a long time to take care of yourself. Like cooking is one that's very, very common that I hear on my coaching calls, how they just like get anxiety cooking again because it always led to some sort of fight or criticism or that kind of thing. And it's really about finding what those activities are that have those connotation and reclaiming them for yourself in some way. So if like cooking's the thing, go on Pinterest and find a recipe that you've never done before and just try it. Just do something new that's just for you and no one else. And that's kind of what you have to do. I think Carrie's example was great. If you're redefining what your holidays look like because of some sort of toxic environment, do something new in it to establish a new norm. And that also can help distract from, just the sitting and thinking of the what if. That's like the biggest rabbit trail that we can get down is the what if trail.
Yeah. Yeah, the what if trail, and the other was everybody has it better than I.
Oh yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man. I've had to that was the one that was like being widowed. I had to about destroyed me. The idea of being alone for the rest of my life. Nowadays, I'm actually to the place where I think, well, I don't know if I want to give up all the independence and freedom that I have.
Yeah.
It's pretty darn nice, but when it first happens, you don't know if you can survive. And the idea here's the other real weird thing I found, and I know people are talking about being lonely. To me, loneliness is really actually more of a state of mind than it is a state of being. I
Oh
mean,
yeah, for
you
sure.
can be in a relationship and be. That was when I was the loneliest.
Yeah.
When I thought that I shouldn't be, and I am. When I'm in a relationship or in a big busy busy family gathering, and then you feel like nobody sees you. That's the absolute worst, in my opinion.
Yeah.
So I've found that it all it takes is seeing yourself is really the way out of being lonely, is recognizing that you matter and that you're with yourself and that this is really, really important. And it helped me a lot. It helped me survive COVID alone. So yeah.
Yeah, I think, and if I'm very transparent with you guys, that was why I stayed in my abusive relationship so long, was the fear of being alone. Because, and I remember even saying to myself, I know he's not the greatest, but at least I'm not alone. Like
Yeah.
I remember saying that to myself. And just like Carrie said, I found out very quickly that there's a big difference between being alone and being lonely. And the loneliest that I ever felt was in that relationship. And not when I was on my own. And sometimes I think you need that time on your own to realize, like, okay, there's nothing wrong with wanting a partner. There's nothing wrong with wanting someone to spend the rest of your life with. But if your life has less meaning to you because you don't have that, then there's something wrong with the priority of that. Because you're not defined if you're in a relationship or not. I use I'm from the South, so bear with me, but I use the pumpkin pie example all the time. That you are all the ingredients of a pumpkin pie, right? But some people like to put Cool Whip on the pie to take it to that next level. Well, you don't need the Cool Whip to make a pumpkin pie. It's just an add-on. It's a bonus. It's something to elevate the flavors of the pie, right? well, we are our own pie. And what a partner should be is that cool with that helps take you to that next level. And if I had this mindset of like, well, no, a partner is needed to complete my pie. And that's not the case. Like, I have everything that I need. I have everything I'm capable of. I can build my own future. I can reach all my goals. I can be a great parent. So I want to define what this looks like for me, so that way when I do invite someone into my circle again, I have a clear boundary where if you don't fit into this, then I'm not going to rearrange this in order for you to fit in. You either help take it to the next level or you don't fit.
That's such a good point. And I think so many of us, we struggle with that. We struggle with, we end up accommodating ourselves to make it work because we're more afraid of being alone than we are afraid of losing ourselves. Which, when you really think about that, putting that side by side, being alone with yourself, having yourself, versus being in a relationship and losing who you are as a person, I think that by far the latter is way worse, way worse.
Oh,
Somebody
sure.
asked a really provocative question, and they asked, is envy part of depression? So when you look at the DSM-5 and the criteria of depression, it doesn't outright list envy, but I would say it certainly can be a contributor, or certainly a feature of depression is when you end up feeling like nothing ever goes well. And there's a sense of like helplessness to this, helplessness. And envy is a great kind of like on-ramp for that to help get you there. But I wouldn't necessarily say that just because somebody's envious necessarily that they have depression. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Yeah, depression is actually, we use it as if it's a feeling word. It's not a feeling word. It's actually a condition and a sets of symptoms that go with the condition. So you'll see a disordered appetite, problems with sleep. They'll have a sense, they feel like there's no energy. They can't get motivated. Or they'll have periods where they have excessive some of that, where maybe they stay up and they don't go to bed, or they are really struggling to eat at all, or they may be overeating. But you'll see sort of some disturbances of sleep and appetite. And then there's just this pervasive darkness. I have people tell me that it's like feeling like you're in a hole that you can't get out. You can see like you should, and you know that maybe life doesn't need to be there. In fact, people actually tell me that life looks darker, that when they view the world feels and looks darker than normal. I've never been depressed. Have you? That's kind of a personal question.
Yeah, I have. I mean, not to the point where I was like treated for it. Mainly because at the time I was dealing with it, I was a little bit too prideful to really get treated for it. But probably most of mine has been situational depression. And I think the worst one actually was, I would say, I don't really know if I would say that I was like depressed after I left my narcissistic ex. I think I was more depressed during the relationship, actually. I think that was actually my lowest point dealing with depression was with him. And because, part of my story is like my coming out story at the same time. So I was with my wife and, we were separating. I came out, and 2 weeks later, I met him. My world was in total turmoil. I was losing friends left and right. I was in a worship program at a pretty big church, and I got ghosted from that, like just taken off the schedule. Like no conversation was had. I was just removed. I knew my family was more sad about the divorce and the coming out, but I knew like my family was being hurt. There was a lot of things being said about me by, we'll just say people. There was just a lot of things being said, and my family was being reshifted. And so even though I'm stepping into like my truth, my world, the world that I had built for myself at that point in my first 28 years of life was just like falling apart. So that's why the love bombing was so intoxicating for me, because I had this guy coming in and, saying all these things and how attractive he was to me and how he wanted kids and, the house and the white picket fence and blah, blah, blah. And so it's like I put all of my hope for a future in this person. And because I didn't have enough self-worth in myself at the time to find my own future and to define what I wanted my life to look like on my own. And I looked for a lot of my identity and my worth and my value, my future through him. And when I slowly started to realize that I had made a mistake, I was like, it was this weird dichotomy of I was so depressed to where I was too depressed to get out because I couldn't see past it. And I was also so depressed being in it. It was like I was stuck in this like depressed fog where I was almost paralyzed. Like I didn't want to be in it, but I also didn't have the energy, didn't have the drive, and didn't have the um what's the word I'm looking for? I didn't think I could do it. Like I didn't see a possibility of a different alternative.
Yeah.
And so I think that's actually when it was worse. The
Yeah.
worst thing.
Yeah, in fact, you kind of connected with something that to me powerfully. In fact, it also connected with somebody else who said that they divorced a narcissistic husband of 30 years and he's iced her out and he's being aggressive and now he's blocking her and won't talk to her and she's wondering will this last forever. That your story and then that comment reminded me of, and this is something I just want everyone to hear. Really want you to hear. When you go through a massive transition, whether it's for you, Trey, leaving that first relationship and then coming out and sort of starting over, or me being widowed, or even after narcissistic abuse, those periods of time of transition, it feels like your life has been destroyed beyond repair. It feels to me, I got to once see Mount Lassen out in California. It blew up in like the early 1900s, and the blast zone for that volcano is hundreds of miles. It's hundreds of miles of circle of no trees still grow in that zone, inside that zone. To me, it felt like I had this blast zone that a whole much of my life was just destroyed. But I want to tell you that's actually not true. And hold on, because things start to quickly rebuild. But when we're in that space, it's easy to be panicked and to feel like it's never going to improve. And you don't know. I didn't feel like I could breathe. I felt like somebody had like a chokehold around my neck and I was being suffocated. But I realized as now that I did it once and after that last, so when it happened again after the narcissistic abuse, and I literally had no place to live, I had no furniture, I didn't even have a car, and my son was laying in the hospital dying of leukemia, I recognized that this was the same place I'd been before when I was widowed. And then I knew this is going to go away. This is really bad right now, but it won't stay bad, just to keep stepping and breathing. And it'll get every day, every second, it'll start to get better. But when you don't have that reference point, it can feel not survivable. It just can feel too big. So I want to tell all of you, please hold on. Please hold on. It will get better. It will.
It
You and
does.
I are living examples of that.
Yeah. And I think the thing to understand too is that it is a combination of time, but it also takes work. Like I think in normal healthy breakups, time is kind of the leading factor when it comes to getting over it. You just got to get used to like establishing your new norms and like all that kind of stuff. You go out with friends again, like you start feeling like yourself, maybe like, I don't know, it depends on how long the relationship is, but we'll just say like 6 to 8 weeks. You kind of start feeling like you're getting back on track. With these kind of relationships though, because of what you went through mentally, time alone, in my opinion, does not heal it. Time without strategy is just time spent when and just feeling stuck. And I think that we can move through this so much quicker than we realize if we were just given the tools. At least that's how I felt. Like if
Yes.
I had just been given the tools, and I kind of broke through my trauma bond fairly quickly compared to most people. And I think that's just because I had been given opportunities in my life to build resiliency already, but I was also just so desperate to feel normal again, like that I just was willing to try anything. Fortunately, I had a background in, like my undergrad degree was in psychology, so I learned some things on my own, and I already knew I liked to journal and this kind of stuff. So again, I had the opportunity to kind of build a little bit of resilience before. But if you're someone that's never really been given, because resiliency it's a skill, it's something that you learn. Like if you're not given adversity, it's really hard to build resiliency.
That's a good
um,
point.
So if you've not been given those opportunities before, then you really have no idea what you're doing. And again, that's the whole baseline and the whole purpose of our group coaching is to give you those specific strategies. If you guys are interested in that, the link to that's in both of our bios. We only take a max of 15 people, and I think we only have like 6 spots left. So we're almost full. It starts on January 7th. You get to be surrounded by a group of people that have been through exactly what you've been through, and you get the best of both worlds with me and Carrie, the strategies and the counseling side. So again, the links to that is in both of our bios. You can go there and get registered because we only have about like 6 spots left for that.
Yeah. Moose Lover 50, I see you. Would you DM me over on Instagram? Let's talk. Somebody's talking to me about an issue that's happening. So yeah, I agree, Trey, that and you're right. Not only did I know it wasn't going to last, but I also knew what I had to do. I knew what I had to do. And I immediately jumped into group. I got group coaching immediately. And I also started to find a new focus for my life. I knew that I had lost all focus. I had no focus and I wasn't going to go back to counseling, but I immediately jumped into like redefining myself very, very quickly. So yeah, I agree. And yeah, like you, I also had a lot of practice at resiliency.
Become a master at overcoming obstacles. That's great.
I one time, one of my most humiliating moments is this, because when to become a psychologist, you not only have to get a PhD, and probably same for occupational therapy, but you have to have supervised hours with another professional. And you have to, for psychology, you have to have 4 years of supervision. 4 full-time years of supervision, 2 years prior to the PhD and 2 years post. So I was in my 2 years of post, and my supervisor heard a bit of my story, and she looked at me and said, "How are you normal?" And I knew she seriously, genuinely wanted to know why I wasn't more ill. And I just thought, oh, this is so embarrassing.
You're like, thanks, coach.
Oh man, yeah. So it's because of resiliency, and that's why it's sort of really amazing. But yeah, it does group. In fact, right where I'm in the section of right now in the How the Body Keeps a Score, he says all the studies on trauma consistently show that support is critical to healing. He said, but not just getting support. It's not enough that you're surrounded by people who love and care about you. It's that they see you, that there's a reciprocity in the experience, that your experience is understood and known and you're seen. And that's what these group experiences do. We can see you, you can feel that connection, you can get the skills to learn how to actually kind of re-regulate when you start. So you're learning what to do when you get a bad moment. It's powerful. For me, it was one of the most healing experiences I had was to do that.
Yeah. I think I didn't necessarily get like group coaching at all, but I think a turning point for my healing journey when I started to feel a lot less crazy and a lot less isolated was when I realized that 2 of my closest friends had been through this. And so just being able to hear them tell my story without knowing my story, if that makes sense. Like just, them talking about their experiences and I'm listening to them and I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what happened to me. It made me feel a lot less crazy. That's the best way that I can put it. Because I really had it in my head. Nobody gets this. Like, nobody's going to understand. And why would anybody understand? I didn't even understand it myself. Like, I wasn't able to explain why I couldn't move forward. I wasn't able to explain, like, I don't know why I can't stop thinking about him. I know he's a jerk. I know he wasn't worth it. I know all of that. Like, but for some reason, I'm still doing it. So if it's like, if I can't even explain why I'm feeling the way that I'm feeling, then how are other people going to be able to understand it? So knowing that I had those 2 close friends that had been through it was a major turning point for me.
Yeah. It was really a major turning point for me too. And there was steps that I did. I educated myself. I got into a group. I refocused myself. And then I also told myself that whatever I was feeling, I could survive. So when I had the other, again, I mean, not only was I left, but my son was dying. So I was kind of like left with 2 like hugely horrible things. At times I couldn't even speak. And I knew that moment, as bad as it was, I wouldn't die. I felt like I was dying, but I wouldn't die. So I would just hold on. I would just hold on and pray and breathe. I kept breathing. And I found out that, I knew feelings were temporary, and I found out they were temporary. It feels horrible. You don't know that you're going to survive, but I found out that I could.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Yeah. Wow. Some of the stuff that the stuff that we go through, right? It's amazing, the human spirit, the resiliency of the human spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, anything else that we want to say before we wrap up today? I know I'm having people who are interested in the group who are checking out the link right now. So I'm so excited. We only have a few spots left. So I appreciate that you guys are going to be there. I can't wait to meet you and get to know you personally. And that's it. I don't know if people realize it's live, guys. It's not it's not an online course. It's not you're going to do this alone. You're doing this live with us in the moment. So that's the additional benefit of it, is you get us in real time interacting with you.
Yeah. And we give like you specific homeworks to work on, and different like it's literal tangible stuff that you can take home and work on and do. And we started from day one. It's a total of 6 sessions. And they are a max of like an hour and 15. So we don't take up like all day every time. And there are opportunities to share with the group, because we do work on the calls. So we have everybody turn their cameras off. Okay, do your work. When you're done, turn it back on. And then we talk about it for about 10 minutes. We move on to the next thing. So it's very interactive. And that's why I'm so confident that just being able to have these like specific strategies is what can be a turning point for people, because that's what took me the longest, was just to figure out what to do. And it was trial and error, and okay, well, that didn't work, but this seemed to work really well for that. And how can I distract myself from thinking about him all the time, and I'm blocking him on Instagram and blocking him back the same day or whatever. I needed these things. And so that's the whole goal of this. Yes, there's a huge need for support groups. They are valued. I'm doing my own. This is just a little bit different. It's more of that. Well, we can't really say the word treatment, but it is that strategy that you need to expedite this whole process.
This starts January 7th. It's a Saturday. It's at 2:30. Goes to 3:45. It's Central Time. People are asking me practical questions. It's $120. That includes for all 6 sessions. I believe you have it to where you can split into 2 separate payments.
Yeah, so you can either just prepay for all of them, and it's $120, so that makes them $20 a session. If you're not able to do that, there's a payment plan. It's technically a little bit more expensive, but it's 3 payments of $60, so it's still only $30 a session. So it's on Saturdays. All the dates are laid out. It's pretty much like every other Saturday.
Yep.
And it starts at 12:30. It's done at 1:45.
No, it's 2:30 and 3:45.
Oh, 2:30. Yeah, that's right. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's the other one. 2:30 to. I'm going to do that a lot. I already know it, because we have 2 going on at the same time. Yeah. So 2:30 to 3:45 max. Sometimes we'll end early. But you guys are given. There's nothing that you have to. Once you're in the group, you're going to have everything you need. So you're going to be given the worksheets. You're going to be given copies of things. You're not going to have to go in and get more stuff and all that. You get the sessions, and then you're set up, and you'll have all the resources that you need. Right. So again, the link to the registrations in both of our bios. When I checked this morning, we only had 6 spots left. So we are almost full, because again, we want to keep it kind of a smaller, intimate group. So 15 is the absolute max that we'll take.
So tell people where they can find you with your handle, and then also, do you go live on a regular basis? And if so, when?
Carrie, so I should go live on a regular basis, but I'm really bad about it. So I will tell you, over the next 5 weeks, when I'm not in school, I will be live on a regular basis, because I don't have an excuse to not go live on a regular basis. But I really do need to go more regularly. But yes, the next 5 weeks I will. So my handles are some version of I was like yo Trey on everything. On TikTok here, it's I was like yo _Trey. And again, if you go to the beacons link in the bio on my TikTok, it actually gives you links to everything else. So I'm on YouTube, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. YouTube is the one that I go into a little bit more longer content, so I can go in more in depth about things. I know Carrie does the same thing on her YouTube channel. So if you're not following me on YouTube, if nothing else, make sure you're following me there, because I go into more detail than I'm able to on any of the other platforms on certain things. I'm also going to be starting like once or twice a week where I'm streaming a video on YouTube and going on there and chatting with you guys during that. I'm actually going to try to, it's giving me some problems today, but I'm going to actually try to do that tonight around like 7:30 Central Time.
Awesome.
But yeah, everything you need's in there.
All right. And I'm Carrie McAvoy, PhD, everywhere is where you can find me. And I'm so excited because I'm laying out 2023 content for YouTube. So I'm going to actually start to break apart a toxic relationship from start to finish. Over the whole year, I'm going to like take it into all these parts and pieces. So I'm planning it out and I'm super, super excited. So if you guys want to know what is it and what happens and why does it happen, what's happening on the inside, what's happening on both people's partners, on their partners and the person it's happening to, I'm going to take all of that kind of like piece and parcel it down into components. My YouTube is Carrie McAvoy, PhD. Is same here, same on Instagram. It's everywhere. So thank you for this, Trey. And I love this running the group with you. It's always so much fun. And this was wonderful hanging out with you today. Thank you for doing this with me. So
yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. You're welcome. If you guys missed today, if you missed all of this, it will be replayed again on YouTube on Thursday on my channel at 2 p.m. or Central Standard Time. And I think, Trey, you'll be putting it up for you as well.
I'll be putting it on my YouTube too, yeah.
Yeah. All right. All right, you guys, take care. I'll see you back on Thursday. I'll be here Thursday at 1. So, but see you guys then and take care. Bye-bye.
Happy holidays, everyone.